Hey guys, I don't really talk about politics very much on this channel because I don't really know anything about politics, and I know firsthand how annoying it is when somebody who doesn't know anything about guns talks about gun stuff, so I try not to be that guy, but for politics, I don't want to be running my mouth off when I don't really understand how the American system of government works, and I don't think anybody that I voted for has ever won anything. That being said, the recent ATF pistol brace ruling does have the potential to have a big impact on our community, so I figured I should probably at least talk about that a little bit. Up until pretty recently, the ATF's position on pistol stabilizing braces was that they were perfectly legal. A bunch of different brace designs also had approval letters from the ATF saying that they were not in fact stocks. For example, the Shockwave Blade pistol braces used to come with a little printed letter basically saying, hey, we ran this by the ATF, they said it was cool, and here's the relevant information. So not only were braces not illegal on the whole, some of them were specifically approved by the ATF, and also their position was that shouldering a brace did not redesign it into a stock. So it was perfectly okay to have a pistol brace on your pistol. The only caveat to that was the ATF's kind of usual position, which is that it was only okay as long as you didn't do it deliberately in an attempt to circumvent SBR law. That, of course, just changed very recently. They released a letter reclassifying pistol braces as stocks pretty much across the board. The really difficult thing about that, of course, is that they haven't yet talked about any specific exemptions to that. Like, there are certain pistol braces that are very clearly better suited for being pistol braces than others. And the ATF hasn't put out a classification system. Originally, when they talked about this a while back, they kind of proposed a point system whereby if your gun had too many points, then it would no longer be considered eligible for a pistol brace. I think they abandoned that because they realized all that would do is incentivize people to try to essentially game the system or find loopholes. So the new version of the law just says no pistol braces. However, the way that that will be determined is they are soliciting people to submit their firearms for approval. So we'll talk about this more in a little bit, but the problem with that really is that you kind of have no way of knowing for sure if your pistol brace is still a pistol brace or a stock until you've sent the ATF a picture of your gun, and then they'll make that call. If you read between the lines, the ATF's reason for implementing this change seems a little bit petty. I kind of get the impression that they were essentially saying, hey, you know what, we said these things were okay for people with disabilities, but you people just won't stop using them as stocks, so now nobody gets to have pistol braces. It does seem like there's a possibility that they could do something, for example, like with car window tint. If you have a prescription from your doctor, you're allowed to have a super dark window tint. If your doctor says you can have a pistol brace, then you can have one. I don't know. Seems like either way, it's going to completely kill the pistol brace industry if it goes through. So what are your options for what to do with your braced pistols? I assume the number one is just to get rid of the pistol brace, remove it from the gun, discard or destroy it, and go back to shooting your AR pistols the way that people used to before the original SIG brace was even introduced, which is to put a little foam cum sock over the buffer tube and just shoot it cheek pistol style. I feel a little bit of chagrin even having to bring that up because I keep making fun of the cheek pistol concept, but here we are. Apparently that guy was very forward thinking. Option two is to register your pistol as an SBR, either the traditional way with a $200 tax stamp, or apparently you can send the ATF a picture of your gun and have them evaluate it. They will either declare that it's acceptable as a braced pistol, or they will say that it qualifies for being registered as an SBR, and theoretically that will waive the $200 tax stamp. Is that a real option? It's kind of hard to say. That people are understandably very wary of sending pictures of guns they own to the ATF because the ATF has a bad track record of murdering U.S. citizens over very petty disagreements. Option number three is the one that a lot of people are talking about on the internet right now, and that is non-compliance. And that is very difficult for me to recommend because I don't want you to get in trouble for anything. And you got to understand that if you do get in trouble, the odds of anybody really coming to your defense are pretty low. There's been a lot of discussion over possibly starting some sort of a defense fund so that people who do get pinched for, violating SBR laws will have some public money available to support them in a legal fight. And that's nice. That's a very good idea because that's sort of the only way that these laws generally get changed. non-compliance is not the same thing as civil disobedience, and I think that's something that you really have to keep in mind. If we use a comparison, probably the most famous example of civil disobedience that people know is in the civil rights movement. Talk about Rosa Parks. Refusing to move to the back of the bus is civil disobedience, and if enough people do it, well, as the saying goes, they can't arrest all of us. That's not how pistol brace non-compliance will work. They don't have to arrest all of us, and they will never arrest most of us, because the thing is that most people will never be caught, will never be charged with anything unless they're in commission of another crime. So that becomes very difficult, because in order to make those legal challenges, essentially you'd be providing money for the defense of people who committed a bunch of crimes and had a illegal pistol brace or something like that. And that's not very palatable for a lot of people. So you can not comply. There are a lot of people that are already not complying, either on purpose or just because the laws are deliberately very hard to understand. There are a lot of people, for example, who still thought that you couldn't shoulder a pistol brace until recently, even though the ATF had gone on record and said that you could. There's people who don't know that SBRs are a controlled item. There are people who don't understand the laws surrounding the use of vertical grips. A lot of ATF rulings tend to be kind of contradictory, so understanding them is difficult. The ATF doesn't really follow their own rules much of the time, and they change their mind very often. So all that stuff is extremely hard to figure out. The real problem, of course, is that non-compliance is not the same thing as civil disobedience. Most people who non-comply will just never be known about, because the ATF doesn't have the resources or the legal backing to just bust down people's doors and measure all of the guns in their safe. Non-compliance is not really an option for people like me on YouTube who have plenty of video evidence of them shooting braced pistols. The ATF knows full well that I own these. In fact, they actually quoted 3 of my videos in the footnotes of their recent ruling letter. 1 TFB TV video and 2 of my own videos. I think they referenced a focus trip video. I'm sure they did a Mr. Guns and Gear video. There's a whole bunch of YouTubers that the ATF has essentially cited as evidence of pistol braces being used incorrectly. Of course, the irony is that they are all videos of the pistol braces being used in accordance with the ATF's previous position on pistol braces. So just for your own safety, I would not encourage non-compliance, because I don't want you to get in trouble, and it will not have the desired effect of proper civil disobedience, because non-compliance happens in the woods, behind closed doors, out of sight of the ATF. It's not going to actually affect meaningful change unless people start getting arrested en masse for non-compliance, which again, they won't. The ATF's actual reach is fairly minimal most of the time, and the places that people own and use their firearms are not under scrutiny by the ATF very often. So that being said, the idea of a legal protection fund for people who are charged with these things is a good idea. How often will that actually happen? Probably not very often. And the last thing to consider is that there's a very strong chance that this ATF ruling will have a lot of legal challenges presented to it. So it could very well be delayed. It could very well be overturned based on recent precedent in U.S. law. Again, I can't talk too much about that because I don't understand how laws work. I can't remember the difference between Congress and the Senate. I'm politically illiterate. So be smart, guys. Make good decisions. I myself am going to enjoy this brace pistol one last time here before the end, and I will talk to you guys soon.